galactic purr of KKs
invites you to Spacecat's happy hour.
Let your mind relax. We meet in a dimension outside of time,
Where the playfully curious thrive.
so go on, fill your tin cup chalice with the sacred elixir of creativity. Laugh till you breathe violet flame at the theme's absurdity. And above all, let out your full-throated song with us.
Here at Spacecat's happy hour, with the galactic purr of KKs.
There we go.
Woo! All right. Welcome to Spacecat's happy hour. I'm bringing my huge staff, giant branch that I've turned into my staff. It has a crystal on the end of it. Look how it keeps going and going and going. If you're listening to this, it's about
Huge. 8 feet?
7 feet long, I guess.
7 feet,
Maybe
yeah.
8 feet. It barely fits in this tiny little apartment.
It's really cool.
Okay. We are recording today on the Jupiter cazimi, which I'm hoping
April
Pirate
11th.
KK will be able to tell us more about the Jupiter cazimi. And we're doing this because we want to talk about power and magic and miracles. So maybe we can start with you talking about the Jupiter cazimi.
Yeah, the cazimi just means that it is directly conjunct the sun. And it's kind of like coming out from under the underworld. Like the first phase is under the beams of the sun. So like about, I don't know, depending on the orbs you use, like 10, degree orb or whatever is 5 to 10 degrees is usually about what people use, I guess. And that's about the time when it starts to become, it's going to start to be eclipsed by the sun. So it is like that sort of underworldy type journey. And so it can feel kind of murky, kind of weird, like Jupiter things, like, expansion and belief and faith and higher learning and finding the meaning in things, that kind of stuff. It's been like, ooh. And now that it's cazimi, it's like directly in the highest, like the sun and Jupiter on top of each other. And so it's like Jupiter and the sun are like just expanding everything. So the sun and Jupiter obviously are right now in Aries. And so that's very, the power of the individual, like the I am, expanding all of that into the beams of the sun, which is like, yes, I know who I am. I know that I am important. I know what matters to me. I know, just who I am. And that is today. So we're having a really good day energy wise of celebrating ourselves and the I amness of our beautiful souls. So
I want to talk about this from a few perspectives. I want to talk about why it feels hard to talk about our powers. I want to talk about the powers themselves and how we perceive them. And I want to talk about what it feels like when whatever we're calling superpowers, when we're getting to know them, like how that can feel, because it can be chaotic and intense.
tiny bit.
I guess I'll start with the second one first, actually.
Yeah.
So I think it's really fun for a lot of us to go through a journey where we're like, oh, I'm just a human being, blah, blah, blah. And then we're like, wait, I have magical powers. I have superpowers, and like expand in that way. I think it's just like super, super fun. But ultimately, every part of us is our superpower. It's like, it's not actually a distinction between whatever and whatever. It's like how we operate now as human beings on a day-to-day basis is going to change and evolve over time, and as it has always been doing. But the parts of us that are just doing our daily human stuff, that's also our superpowers, they're just as powerful. Our parts that feel very weak and vulnerable and fragile are like our superpowers are hidden in there too. Like there's a lot of people that talk about that too, where your blockages are, where your superpowers, all that stuff. So it's like, but for the purposes of this episode, we're talking about them in that kind of classic fun way. Like things that I didn't know I could do that are like trippy and and like magical or mystical or whatever that now we can do.
Yeah.
What about you? How do you perceive
I
powers?
enjoy that you brought up the human parts too, because part of the waking up or whatever, or part of being alive at this time, or, you know, in our past beginning of life until about now or whatever, it's like, we think the earth is terrible. It's a prison planet. Like, and then you start waking up and you're like, oh my God, I'm trapped here in this stupid place, blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to be in this human body, blah, blah, blah. And it's like that your body is this amazing piece of technology with its own consciousness and self-healing capabilities. And it's these systems that work just automatically. Like it's incredible, the consciousness that your body has. And so part of this latter part of my awakening, because I went through the same thing where I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be in a human body. This is so stupid. I want to get out of here. I'm not from here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I enjoy being in a body now because I'm realizing how awesome it is. It's literally of the earth. And it's this amazing, you know, consciousness-based vehicle that my soul is operating and like working in tandem with. It's not, one is not in charge of the other. We're like a team now. And I've never felt like a team before. And so the human parts are just as fucking important as the star being, the soul or whatever that's incarnated into it. And like your human ancestry, like your lineage, your DNA holds so much ancient wisdom and obviously trauma too, or whatever. But like, that's, you know, it's the whole process of, this is the game that we're playing. We're in these vehicles and we are supposed to feel like a team. And if you don't, that's fine. I've spent much of my life not feeling like a team. It's only a very recent thing, but now that I do, and I'm kind of getting used to that, I still slip into like, oh crap, I don't know anything about this body. And, oh, you know, I'm not like perfect yet, but at least I'm on the way to being way more integrated and feeling grounded and like being of the earth. And the earth is this amazing library of it's crazy to live. I cannot believe we get to live here at this time, like being in these bodies right now. I am just overwhelmed sometimes with how interesting and marvelous and like awe-inspiring life is. And it's really nice to be able to say that out loud right now, because I've spent quite a few months and like especially the past few weeks feeling like everything is shit again. And it's like, I know that's not my real self. I like how you said, you were talking about something earlier and you're like, this is not my home. You know, I keep saying like the frequency of being in the muck, like that's not my home, and how like being home is the frequency of joy and love and creation and all that stuff. And so I know that's my real self. I know that's my real home, is that frequency. So it's really nice that we're doing this on the Jupiter cazimi day, because I feel even more like, yes, this is my home. This is my home frequency of feeling like I love this body. I love this earth. I love everything about this time that we're incarnated in. And it's all miraculous. And I feel miraculous. And there's plenty of magic in the world right now, even though, you know, like I said, I've spent a couple of weeks now feeling like that's not true, even though I know it's not, like that's not my real frequency. But I've been clearing out some programs. So I kind of went off on side quests. I don't even know if I answered your question, but
no, it was really, there's a few things I wanted to pick up on. Well,
okay.
I think if you listen to our last episode where we got really into neurodivergence and our human parts, like we were really talking about those parts of ourselves that feel more susceptible to overwhelm and things like that. And which also I know hold powers in themselves. But I think that's why you and I both, and I'm sure many other people with neurodivergence or other reasons, are like have trouble connecting to their bodies because it's so overstimulating and tend to then like just retreat and disassociate from the body. So coming back into connection with the body and like feeling like the body is like a miraculous gift is like a whole journey in and unto itself. And then I also just wanted to bring up the point, because you mentioned, I don't think I said this on air, but the shift from saying this is not. So there have been times in my journey where a part of me, or I would be tuned into a frequency that was so loud and so overwhelming and so scary. And it would get to the point that would create such intense thoughts in my head that it would just kind of snap me out of it. And I would start saying, this is not me. This is not me. And it was helpful for me. throughout the past 3 years to be able to snap out. Usually would send me like suicidal thoughts of some kind.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it was helpful, although unpleasant way, to kind of snap myself out and remind myself that something was awry, and I was seeing things in a distorted way. So I used to say, this is not me, but just very recently, over the past 2 or 3 days, I've shifted to saying this is not my home, because so much of my path is about like bringing all the parts of the self into the whole and integration and stuff. It doesn't usually help me to necessarily say this is not me, because usually there is a part of me in there that then feels rejected, that it was like attaching to that storyline. So versus just like, this is not where I live. And then when I'm in those periods where one of my parts is like really clamoring and it feels like it's all of me and it's like taking over, and it's just, I'm having like self-doubt or racing thoughts or all that fearfulness, I don't have to worry about getting into the weeds of, is this me or is this just part of me, blah, blah, blah. I can just say, this is not my home. And it kind of like simplifies that and gets me out of my thought loops around all that stuff, which is nice. But I had to go through the part of saying, this is not me at certain times. It was helpful.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I was like, this is not who I am. The real me knows that this is not, this is not me. But you're right. And especially over the last week or so, I've been like, recognizing that when I say stuff like that, it does feel like a part of me is rejected. And I'm like, it's just so interesting, the nuances that you uncover as you go through all this stuff, and that neutrality of, I don't know, just seeing your parts that you want to reject or have rejected. And you're like, wait a minute, why am I doing that? It's and it's fine either way. Like we all go through the process. I'm not judging myself for doing that, even though I did for a time. I was just like, it's never too late to come back to yourself and not reject the parts of yourself that you have been, and I think I was doing that a lot, where I was like, it's, it is too late to heal, or it's too late to do such and such. And it's like more and more, I'm like, it's literally never too late. You can do it right now. And it doesn't mean you don't have to beat yourself up for, slipping back into it if that happens, but it's just never too late to turn it around. And I don't know, that's really helped me reframe a lot of stuff, where I don't feel like I have failed. So many times have I labeled myself a failure or whatever. And I'm not doing that anymore, because that's an old story and I don't have time for those old stories, only new ones. I honor the old stories, but I'm not gonna keep playing them out. So
yeah. And it's also just so interesting how that's why like a piece of advice or a strategy or an affirmation will work sometimes or at some points in our journey, and then will stop being useful, and why it's so helpful for me not to like judge them when they don't work, or say that they're garbage, or judge people who are saying something that doesn't work for me right now as like bullshitters or whatever. Right. So it's like we really use different tools for different circumstances. It's overwhelming in its own way, but also kind of like fun in a different way. Fun and refreshing and interesting. So, okay. And now as to, I was actually going to ask if you could tap into one of your superpowers, if you don't mind. Sorry, I should have asked you this before. And like send, if you're willing to, a little bit of like whatever energy is necessary to support, because I do have this baggage and old stories and wounding around talking about the things that I've experienced or that I've participated in, or like miracles and stuff, like just really talking about it a lot at length. Because I have that, I call it like one of the witch wounds, where it's like, people aren't going to like you anymore. People aren't going to relate to you anymore if you are speaking from the parts of you that feel really secure and confident and don't feel afraid and feel very like invulnerable and like incredibly powerful. Then they're just gonna like think that you're an asshole or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. It's like, even talking about having the thing feels cringy and like whatever. It's like, but it exists in me, so therefore I'm sharing it.
Get the vulnerable part out loud. And I definitely did just have a little energy exchange there. It was really acute. Do you want the visual that I have, or will that take away
sure,
from?
Please.
Okay. I saw you carrying big, kind of dull brown yellow suitcases. And I sent some scalar energy in, which is this beautiful, cheerful, sunshiny, but not quite sunshine. It's such an interesting, it's like a certain hour of the day type sunshine. And even then, that's not even quite the right color that I'm seeing. But anyway, it's just this beautiful, cheerful energy that can literally do anything. It just has this consciousness, and you're just like, you direct it to where you need help and like how you need the help, and it literally works every time. I don't fucking know. Anyway, so it dissolved the suitcases, and then became like a sunshine, because your sun portal, your other name is sun portal, and so you're holding the hand of a sun, whatever, and then also the scalar energy is also holding your other hand, and so you're just like standing there like, no more baggages, I am strong, and holding hands in a comforting way that's like actually giving you strength and support. That was the visual that I just saw.
That's so nice. I'm feeling it. It's like moving. There's like something in constriction in my right knee, just to say what I'm feeling from your support. And it's like working through that. And then I also carry a lot of stuff in my armpits. So there's something in my right armpit like feels clear and releasing too.
I had also a clearing from my right armpit last night too. It was really weird. I don't know why I said that. Okay, go ahead.
I should, the armpits are the lymph, and I forget what the lymphatic system represents. Anyway, I won't get sidetracked. But just when you mentioned the name Sun Portal, when that came through, I was like, I can't start calling my, like, I was like, okay, that's my name now. Like Zaddy Cat felt very me because it was kind of silly and playful, you know, and then Sun Portal felt very like, oh boy, it's the person that calls himself Sun Portal. Showing up in like whatever situation is like, like I had a big inner eye roll, and I've had trouble fully
I just
claiming that name, which is really just like saying I'm a portal, you know. It's like it's the same thing as a channel, right? The Zadik is a channel, it's a portal, it's like the same thing, but it just has sun. But for some reason it sounds cringier to me. So I've done a lot of like, anyway, it's just been hard for me to claim. And I was thinking also about how with our new birthdays that we talked about in another episode, where we both got new birthdays last year, and we both have Leo risings now. So like the magician card comes out for me a lot in tarot, and clearly I'm holding a huge wand right now. Like clearly there's a part of me that likes to be like, look at me, look what I can do. But the I'm also Aquarius moon has like extremely
do not like, perceive me.
It's just like, look what we all can do. And so a lot of times, like mostly when I'm sharing these things, I'm just like, look what's possible. But then I get all hung up on being like, saying like, and I did it, you know, like that's the part. But anyway, it is cool to see what's possible. So do you have any of that feelings? Like, do you
like not wanting to claim things? Cause it sounds like, yeah. Oh my God. When I first discovered that I was a record keeper in human form, like an Akashic record keeper in human form, I was like, no, I'm fucking not. I will never admit that to anyone. There is no way. I didn't even want to believe it myself. I was like, I don't know why I just thought that as a possibility, because that is way too big for my britches. That is like claiming your God or something. There was also a time when I think I had just done something with Hecate. I forget, was this 2022 sometime in there? And I forget what happened, but basically something channeled out of my mouth. And I was like, I am you, saying that about Hecate. And I was like, well, I'm just kidding, Hecate. I would never claim to be you because you're a goddess and I'm not. And then I was like, wait a minute, I am a trash goddess. What is wrong? You know, that is so definitely those kinds of things where I felt like way too big for my britches, and that there was no way I would ever be. I was like, that is hubris to claim this shit. And now it's like, obviously, I mean, I still have a little bit of discomfort fully claiming it, because again, I still feel like I'm claiming to be God or something, like a ridiculous claim. But at the same time, more of me has felt way more comfortable just owning all of that stuff. And I have to keep reminding myself that this has been like maybe a little over a year before the word grief eater was dropped in my head last March. And I saw my record keeper self like back in, January of 2023 or 2022 or something like that. I mean, these have literally been like a year, maybe a little bit more. So of course I'm still going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but also I'm really happy with my progress of owning myself and all my parts. And I don't know, one of my core wounds has been thinking I am not important, or it's that same, we're talking about the Leo rising stuff where I'm like, and I have an Aquarius sun like you, an Aquarius moon, and so we're both like, well, yeah, look what we can all do, and it's like Leo is like, but wait, I also can do this. So I'm kind of with you. I think a similar journey of going through.
Leo is just the fun of being like, this is how it comes through in my individual little prism, how it shines through, and look.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's funny because I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but when you're saying you're God, I'm like, yeah, you're God. We're God. We're all God. Like, I came to spirituality with 2 simultaneous podcasts. One of them was Jessica, who talked about us being aliens. And the other one was Noah, Synchronicity, whose thing was like, you are literally God. You are God. You are God. And he would say it all the time. And that was the mantra. And it was like, you have to remind yourself. That's not saying I am. It's like the end of the sentence is I am God. I am sovereign. I am free. Like, so when you were saying that, I was like, no, but you are.
Like, duh. You obviously.
You're that too.
Yeah. And I don't know why claiming, like, knowing that I'm God, because I feel like I came to a little bit more comfort with that before I came into comfort with the other things like Trash Goddess, like Records Keeper in human form, like, also being a space station, like, what the fuck does that even, I mean, that's pretty cool, but like, I think the comfort of already knowing that I was a fractal of God, it felt more comfortable because it felt like I wasn't necessarily claiming a title because God is everything, but for some reason, specific titles like Records Keeper or whatever, it was like, who the fuck do you think you are? Or I don't know. It makes no logical sense, but in my head, that was what transpired.
No, that's so interesting. I think you're expressing something that I didn't have words for yet. So thank you. Yeah, fractal of God. That's a really nice way to put it too. There was something you said in there. Oh, I just wanted to, okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty. So you've said a few things, so I want to talk about them. Let's talk about the Akashic Records Keeper and how that's been playing out, like how it came online for you, how you experience it.
It's how do I explain it? I've already sort of, I think on the podcast, I've said before, like my inner Pisces soup of just like knowing shit. I feel like everything is in there and I just need ways of pulling out specific information that needs to come through. And so I know a lot of people who work with the records, tend to say a prayer before, they open the records with the prayer, they close the records with the prayer, blah, blah, blah. And I used to do that because that's how I learned to access the records. But now that I just am, now that I know that I just am, I don't do that anymore. It's like I'm constantly in the records because I am a fractal. Again, I'm not claiming I'm the whole records, but like I am a fractal of the records and I have access to all the everything. And so basically every conversation I have with people is an Akashic Records reading to an extent. It's not, I'm not constantly like, there's times when the energy flows in a healing way or in a clearing way or in a, whatever type of way. But my energy field is literally a mixture of like the Akashic Records energy, the Grief Eater energy, the Underworld Trash Goddess energy. It's like all working together to interact with people. And that's how I'm like doing my job or whatever on Earth. It's like, putting the codes into the earth and into like clearing other people. And anyway, it's a constant, I exist and that's me doing my job and coming here and all that stuff. So that was sort of like a mishmash of all the things, but as a records keeper, it's like, it's just like it literally everything that and that's why I love having conversations with people and talking to people, because I know that everything that comes out is meant to come out in some way, like, oh, we're interpreting a dream now, or, oh, we're going to have this like seemingly mundane conversation. And then all of a sudden we're like, dang, so much makes sense, but I didn't even know I was going to ask that question. Like that's how I experience just being in the records, because it's just a constant knowing of stuff. And I know that there's everything in there, but it's not like I can tell you, you know, if you're going to ask me something about astrophysics, I don't know that I would be able to answer that. It has to be in my own, you know, knowledge of these subjects in general. But that's why I learn so much about like multiple different topics, because I want to have the vocabulary of all different kinds of subjects in order to be able to talk to, you know, about all kinds of, I don't know, I guess just topics. I can't really finish that sentence. I'm distracted because there is a very loud bird, and I'm just like, you are just such a noisy neighbor right now. Anyway, in a nice way. Like, I love him, but Jesus, it's really, really loud. So yeah, that's how I experience being in a record keeper, I guess. It's like,
and you also are good at tuning into when things are going to happen time-wise.
Oh, I forgot
which
about
I
that.
think blends your innate knowledge, your record keeper thing, with your knowledge of astrology, and like,
Yeah.
so you just intuitively have a good sense of like, I think like without having to know the astrology in advance, you'll be like, it feels like this is like a few months away, or not this year, or like stuff like that. I've noticed that about you.
It's interesting too, because like sometimes I feel like an idiot because it's not that I get things wrong, but like it's the Akashic records and energy in general is just like you're feeling into probable timelines. So it feels like this is probably going to happen, or something like this, or, you know, you can get the archetypes of energies, especially with the astrology and that kind of stuff. And it's like, we're in a time period of this quantum, everything is happening literally everywhere all at once. There's a reason that movie won at the Oscars. It's like, this is where we are, and timelines are being decided like kind of on the fly. Like, there are probable ones, but we're kind of playing them out. And so sometimes when it's like, I really thought something was going to happen, like I really thought March was going to be a big month for us to really start doing stuff and like getting answers and like all this stuff. And it didn't turn out that way, but it didn't mean that nothing happened in March. It was a big start to a new chapter. I think just a lot of stuff was happening behind the scenes instead. And so it's going to start playing out. It's just like, sometimes I get really like self-conscious about, I feel like this was going to happen, and I say this, and then it didn't turn out that way. And it's like, well, you know what? That was just a probable timeline. And I have to be comfortable in that, you know, claiming, like knowing that I'm correct as I'm saying it, but also preparing for like, it might not play out that way if other things happen to sort of sidetrack us a little bit to get us to the highest timeline or whatever. I don't know why I had to throw it in there, but
like timing's it's so tricky.
I know
to like, because like our souls just don't give a shit about linear time. So
I know.
Like, if we're off by like months or years, they're like, who cares? But like in our human avatars, it feels really uncomfortable.
So uncomfortable
to not have that like crystal clear certainty all the time. I also want to talk about a fun one, because I think it's interesting example of what it feels like when it's coming online, but we're not comfortable with it. So I want to talk about your temperature. So in our sessions, it came through multiple times very strongly that you have control over temperature.
Which I still can't quite figure out. Like, I know, I hear you, I feel it, but I'm just like, I do not know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing.
So one of the ways that it's been playing out in your life is with your stove. You have this stove in your house that you moved into, the wood pellet stove, and it keeps being wonky. So it's like when you have a power in that area, but it's working without your conscious control over it. It tends to show up as a lot of wonkiness. So what you was like breaking down, or
it broke twice in 2 weeks, or just stopped lighting, like it wouldn't light. The same issue twice in 2 weeks. And the 3D explanation was there was ash in the tray that needed to be cleaned, like whatever, that was the thing. But it didn't need to happen twice in 2 weeks. Like, there's just no way. And I knew it was partly to like get the person who came to clean my stove, like he's clearly supposed to be part of my life in whatever way. And so it was like the first time it broke, and he came over, and it was a brief interaction, and then it happened again. And I know it was to get him to come back anyway. So I don't know. Some of this stuff is like, I know I'm calling it in soul wise, but my human self is like throwing tantrums. Like, why the fuck, man? The stove should not be doing this again. And I still haven't figured out how to communicate with my soul or whatever to figure out how to do this consciously. Cause I am still like, like especially the wind thing. And
Yes,
I don't
that
know.
one too. Well, I'll just
I
stick
don't-
with the heat for a
temperature.
second
Yeah.
because it's just such a classic thing of like powers coming online is for things to go haywire in that department and stuff. So just for other people listening, if you're having areas going haywire, it can be an indication. Sometimes there's other stuff too, like our toilets are often showing us like timelines. Toilets like to show us timelines, but like the power,
Electricity.
You and our friend Pearl too, both put the power on and out. Pearl was doing it a lot. It was at the same time, I think it's very earth-based, feminine, deep feminine powers for both the temperature and the literal like power grid. But the power is going out in your houses or your neighborhoods. And for Pearl, it was like a few times, like staying up for a long time and stuff. And it's also happened to another friend of mine. And then for you, I think it was pretty fast, went on and came back off. So
little blips.
Yeah. Okay. But then yes, the wind. How have you felt the wind one? I
don't quite get. I definitely have weather related abilities. I just, I know how this is going to sound, so I'm just going to say it. I think I don't quite have as much say in the weather at this point because there are other technologies controlling it partly. I think, I don't know. I haven't really tapped into that to see what actually is going on there, but I can sometimes, a lot of times I was able to call in rain. Whenever I go through a clearing, I call in rain of some kind, like I think subconsciously or whatever. I don't think I do it consciously, but I love rain and I would like more of it. And so it's like, I can feel when that works, but then other times when I do want rain, it'll be like motherfucking bluebird day. And I'm like, fuck, the sun sucks. Not really, but I just love rain so much. And then the wind thing too, where it's like, I don't want to like the crazy tornado like winds that have been going through every so often. I'm just like, I don't like that. So I kept trying to tap into it. Like, I don't want to be afraid of you or unsettled by you or whatever. So like, what are you here to tell me or to do or whatever? And I got the message that like the wind is the fun phase of air. Like who wouldn't want to run around and play and frolic and like go as fast as you can, like because you can fly, like all this. So I get that the wind is a really cool ally. I just still haven't quite figured out how to work with it in a conscious way. And maybe that's coming, but every time and you always remind me too, it's because I was just about to say, every time I try, it feels kind of hard and impossible. But then as you remind me every time, it's like, just play with it, like be curious with it. And so I'm having trouble finding that line of like, how to command while still being curious, but like, I don't want to overpower anything. Anyway, it's just a playfully curious process and I haven't figured it out yet, and that's fine. But sometimes I get frustrated. So as soon as I get frustrated, I try to not, I just back off.
There's such an interesting thing about commanding your reality, because ultimately, again, with the integration path that you and I are on, there's the energy of like stepping in and commanding and something happens because you want it to happen. But then there's also the energy of just going with the flow and trusting that seasons of what are being offered to you or whatever the earth is offering to you in that moment and naturally flowing your way is great and doesn't always need to be fixed and corrected and controlled. And I still wouldn't say I've gotten to like the point of total comfort or ease with that concept, and what sometimes feels like a very tricky thing to walk. When if I can do it, why don't I always do it? Why can't I always have it the way, like that kind of thing?
Yeah.
But it's what I've learned, because for the first few years of my awakening, the sun like just totally followed me everywhere and followed my mood. And like, even if it was a really shitty day, at the point where I needed a break to go outside and take a walk, it would be sunny out. And if I was ever going to go on vacation and it was like a forecast of constant rain, it was like nothing but sun the whole time, because that's what I like.
That's awesome.
And so I got really used to that. And then just over the past 6 months, especially this winter, it was a real integration of like, no, you're going with the seasons now and you're going to see what the seasons have to offer. And the sun is not going to be like, it was like, I went like so many trips or situations where there was forecasts of constant rain, and then there would just be nothing but sun. Like it was like very much like showing me like, yes, you this is you are doing this. But yeah, so then when I went into this, I was like, wait, what happened to my son? You know, but it was just like, no, this is like a real winter. You're really hibernating. This is like a winter's winter to really feel into what that season is. So yeah, I guess I'm just trailing off. I don't have much more to say,
No,
but yeah, it's like that balance. But when you bring the rain, I always say it's because you're using the wind to move the clouds to bring the rain. That's how you're bringing the rain, I think.
Okay.
Because it's definitely what's come through is wind.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, you know, it's such a big power, weather power, to have it and immediately know all the aspects of it wouldn't be that fun. For it to like unfold over a lifetime and learn more. True. It's more interesting and fun than to know everything like right away. And then it's like, it was this huge thing, right? I just feel like there's so many people that are already doing this stuff. If they just paid attention, they would notice that they have these abilities too. I think people tend to think really small when they start to think about their superpowers and abilities. And if you're listening to this and a thought crosses your mind, I don't have that problem. I think big. When I was hearing my podcast at first, people would say like really grandiose things. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm on board for that. Not always, but like a lot of the time it'd be like, but I've noticed people will be like, yeah, I think I can like sometimes. And it's like, yeah, you can do that. And also like, you're already doing
think bigger
that. Yeah. Think bigger. You're doing more than that all the time.
Yeah.
But what we're really doing most of the time is just closing our eyes to it. Although not always. It's also like, not everything is, I find a lot of our powers we have glimpses of them in our childhood or growing up, or if we look back on our life, we see how they've been like playing out or things like that. But it's still, they keep some surprises for fun too.
Yeah, that's what it's really good to remember that this is a game, and we have hidden things from ourselves so that we can rediscover them for the first time. Yeah. And that's what I have been getting uptight about. And when I remember that that's not what I'm supposed to be doing, like just, you're not supposed to know everything. You're not supposed to control everything. Just go with the flow and have fun. It's like, oh, then I can get out of my uptightness. But I've relaxed a lot, even though it sometimes doesn't seem like I have.
No, it does. Oh, I also wanted to say something just in case there's people listening because you mentioned your grief eater, but just a quick summary. To be on the receiving end of the grief eater services is if you're having dense emotions and you just feel like you need to offload them, like, you know, you looked at your shadow, you've done your healing work, but you just need these emotions to clear out. Like you go in and have the assistance from various entities to like just literally eat them. So what it feels like as the person who's received this from you many times is just a lifting and lightening of like, it just clears out very, very, very softly and effortlessly.
Oh, that's so nice to hear.
And there's a big mood shift and you can just go about your day in a completely different frame of mind. It's very gentle. So that's
awesome.
The grief eater.
Thanks, man. Yeah. And the grief eater, just in case people don't, it's not just grief. I mean, that's the main, whatever, but it's also fear, shame, and guilt. The quiet, heavy, dense frequencies, energies that are just like, you feel like you gotta have that. They feel like suitcases that you should be carrying around all the time. Cause like those things that we fear and feel shame and guilt and have grief, all that stuff, it just is like, why would I give them up? They've always been with me or whatever. And it's like, I can show you, you don't have to live with them. You don't have to like, it's not like you forget them or who are you without these emotions basically? And that's what happens when you have a session. It's like, well, you're going to find out and it's going to be awesome. Don't worry.
Yeah. And then now there's a lot of stuff with your dreaming.
Oh, fuck. Yeah.
That's
forgot about the dreams.
Amplifying lately.
Yeah. Zaddy Cat did a lovely, I cannot even talk about how much, I know we need to get into your own superpowers, but like your Oracle stuff. Oh my God. The activation of my dream space after your Oracle reading was like, I was like, I'm dreaming in like 4K and I don't know, I was dreaming for other people. Like I've already sort of been able to get messages in my dreams for you. But then after the activation, it was like, I started getting messages for another friend of mine. And then like, anyway, it's just been a really fun, and I feel like I'm not necessarily in control of my dreams. It's not like I'm lucid dreaming, but like I feel like the stuff that's coming through in my dreams, messages wise, is just so much. It's like packed full of information and messages, and I understand them better. I know exactly what I'm getting out of them. Even if it's cryptic at first, I'm like, oh wait, no, it's got to be this. And then it like, I just know it is. And anyway, it's just your activation was pretty fucking cool for my dream space. Just going to tell you that now. I already told you that, but I have to say it on air because everybody needs to hear so they come to you for oracle readings.
Yeah. And you've been just picking up on stuff that was happening in my waking life, and it'll be incorporated into your dreams.
So wild.
Or cool. Whatever. And yeah, very interesting. You started doing remote viewing.
Oh yeah.
In your dream. That's a big
that was wild
thing that keeps coming up again as well for you a lot, is a remote viewing ability that feels like you're just starting to play with and stuff.
Yeah.
You will have they're very Akashic records dreams because they're so comprehensive. It's like, here's all the data in the dream. Just like very, very.
That's true. I forgot. My dream notes are like pages long a lot of times. Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. I wanted to talk about the space station thing too. What that feels like to you to be a space station.
Yeah, it's at this point. So I had an interesting experience Saturday night. Actually, I don't think I've told you this yet because I don't know why. I guess I forgot. But anyway, it's coming up now. It was a really intense day on Saturday. Like, felt like Phoenix energy. I was just like, whew, some shit was getting cleared out, and it was a rough day. But that night, after it had been cleared out and I was kind of like centered again and back to normal or whatever, I had this really cool experience where I felt into the planets and the planetary energies, and like my different selves related to those planetary energies. Anyway, it was like I was feeling the whole zodiac and like my zodiac. Yeah, it was a really like I could feel how my Lyran self was in my 11th house of community, and it had been empty, in my original birth chart, but now it's like he's in here because I'm going to start being part of a community, and my new birth chart has it has Mars in the 11th house. Anyway, it's just I was feeling into the combination of my two divine feminine birth charts. I haven't, I know that I have a divine masculine birth chart too, but that seems to be sort of like a thing I explore later. But anyway, I was just feeling into the personalities of the planets in a way where I was like, oh, I can describe these, I can feel them, and I can live the planetary energies in my anyway, it was just a really cool, and that's what it feels like as my spaceship. Like that is the me, that is the spaceship. It's like the space station. The space station is the Akashic records basically. And then there's different parts of me that exist in the space station that are bringing in their wisdom. Like either it's past lives me, future lives me. Like I don't really know exactly what, it's just like who I am, and all those wisdoms coming through of like, this is why you incarnated, to bring all this in as a blueprint. And whatever this Lyran self is of mine, he's got blueprints for the community stuff that I'm going to be building out. So I don't have that unlocked yet, but like he's there now, and I can see him, and I know that we're going to be communicating as soon as we need to, and he's going to just unravel all the things that need to happen for me to build out whatever this community is. And then my pirate queen self. Anyway, it was just like, it was a really cool, that's what it feels like to be the space station. It's like there's different parts of me, and yet also I am the space station itself because it's the records. I don't know. I might not even be making sense, but it's a really fun place to be. And I know I like in other, speaking of dream stuff too, I can feel when I dock or something. I don't know how to describe it necessarily, but like we will overlap together, like people I'm dreaming of, like, and it's because it's happened with you. Like I've had dreams where like I'm teaching something and then you're teaching something, but like our space stations or spaceships or whatever, like they come together, but there's no walls. It's just like the consciousnesses merge or something, so we can share knowledge and exchange stuff. It's like a quantum space, basically. Anyway, that's probably a very muddled explanation of what it feels like to be a space station, but that's the best I got at this point. We'll revisit, I guess, as it becomes clearer, but that's
awesome.
That made sense.
I just had a very strong message come through that the purpose of this episode is because people are supposed to hear this, because you hear it and it activates it in you. This is how so many, we haven't talked about yet about that. That was a very helpful knowledge that was passed on through Noah's Synchronicity podcast to me, which he called it 6-dimensional learning, which is just like you're exposed to somebody being able to do something and then you can do it. You don't have to go through a whole learning and like, and sense. So there's various stages of that. And sometimes it's like half that, half learning or whatever. There's all sorts of ways. It doesn't matter which path you take, but that 6-dimensional thing where you're just literally, that's why I call myself a portal too. I'm an activation portal. Like people just, you pass through me and then the thing is activated, but it can happen so much more. Like there's a million ways to be activated. It can happen just by listening to a podcast and being like, and then it's like, and then that started happening for me too.
Exactly.
Final thing I wanted to say about you is the astrology thing. I remember what came through is you'd be able to weave people's old charts versus their new chart, or like some kind of weaving that you're going to do of like meta astrology. I don't know. It just, it's yours to discover, but that came through as something as well.
It's so funny that you're bringing this. I'm just like, how much have I forgotten about myself? I love that you but you get to be the mirror for this. Cause I'm like, oh, right. It's so much easier to be able to talk about yourself when someone else is kind of already interviewing you, or not interviewing you, but like pulling out the good stuff. Cause they're your friend and they know that like, this is what you should be talking about. Okay. So the astrology thing. Okay. I have already gotten the very strong impression that astrology is going to be changing. Like we've had the archetypal energies of the planets, like the mythology associated with the planets and the asteroids and all that stuff. It's like very coded to the old game. And we're still going to be using that astrology because people are still playing the old game. We're bridging old and new games right now. And so for however long, in the future, I'm going to be like, there are those of us who are going to be experiencing new planetary energies. So it's kind of like a different astrology. Like Saturn is going to feel very different in the new game than the old game, for example. I don't know how that feels yet, because like I feel like I've gotten a glimpse of it, but living it fully hasn't really come online yet. So like I have gotten the message that I will be coding. Part of what I'm doing is coding astrology to the new game by like figuring out the new mythologies, the new cosmologies, the new stories, basically, of all this stuff. And I have no idea how I'm going to be doing that, but I know that I've got past lifetimes as at least one lifetime. I feel like it's multiple lifetimes in the past as, major astrologer type lifetime or whatever. And so I'm bringing that into this lifetime also as like here's the ancient knowledge that I have that I'm still kind of relearning, because I don't consider myself an expert in astrology by any means, but like I know it's there inside me and I'm just kind of pulling it out as it unfolds, because we're living linear time. And so I'm going to be teaching people and creating new astrologies, basically. And I have, again, no idea how that's going to look, but just what you were saying earlier, I was like, yes, that is, I should have mentioned that because I forgot that was one of the downloads I have about the future chapter. Oh, so much to be excited about. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Also, the bird was reminding you that you're an animal communicator.
Oh my God. How did I forget everything?
I knew that bird was doing something.
I have literally forgotten all this. I can't wait to edit and re-listen to this episode because I'm just gonna be like, oh my God, so many cool things about me that I've just Yes, apparently I can communicate with animals. And dude, whoever saw Dr. Dolittle when they were little and didn't want to communicate with animals, I don't know how you can do that. Anyway, yeah. So I have no idea how that actually works, but I definitely know that I have that ability. And I've been trying to sort of talk to Guinan, hey, I don't know how this works. Can we, or if I see my vulture family hanging out on the barn roof or whatever, I'll be like, hi, I love you. I don't hear from them necessarily, but I don't think it's going to show up in the way, it's not going to maybe look like Dr. Dolittle or whatever. It's going to be something different.
You find it easier to tap in when you're helping somebody because I've asked you before, with the spiders, at the Airbnb that I was staying at, and you were like very easily spoke with them and got messages from them. And also that cat that we saw on our trip, again, when we met up together in San Francisco, and you were like able to be like, no, it's fine. It's like, it was just passing through and it's okay. And
That's
like,
right.
but I think it's easier for you when you're doing it for others than when you're just trying to do it for yourself.
That makes so much sense too, especially with, I was going to say my old chart, like my stellium in the 7th house of like one-on-one relationships. It's like, I get a lot out of that. And that's the 7th house is also clients. It's friendships, marriage, business partnership, like it's one-on-one relationships, like that kind of stuff. And I get like, that is a major exclamation point of energy in my life where it's, I get a lot out of that basically. So I feel like that's a huge part of my life path that you're just now reminding me I knew, but had forgotten or whatever. Anyway, that makes sense that I should be just playing with it in that way and not trying so hard to like make it look a certain way or something. Thanks, Sadie Cat Sun Portal. I love you.
And also you have a very powerful ability to magnetize resources to you, and you manage to magnetize a free house and land into your life, which is like a crazy huge thing.
Good call. Yes, I do have that divine feminine black hole magnetism energy of just like, it's all gonna be here, which it's easy for me to forget because it doesn't show up in the way you expect. And so I'm like, but it doesn't look like this, so I can't really do anything. And it's nice to just have the reminders, like you literally have all of this stuff and everything you need is, and it's just going to be more and more, like, as building this empire of mine. I'm going to draw in more of the stuff. So yeah, thanks for reminding me of that too. That feels good.
So I just want to pause and say that was one person you just heard, and all of those different things. Now, we're both manifesting generators, so we like to dabble in a lot. And so it doesn't mean everybody doesn't take that same path. Some people take a bit more of a focused, concentrated path in a specific area. But the thing with these powers is literally, it's like fueled by your desire. So if you really, really want to play with something, like you can. And likewise with powers, you'll have stuff in your personal potpourri. Like we naturally gravitate towards being able to do things that are a fit for what we enjoy more usually, but we'll have in our buffet of powers things that we end up deciding we don't actually enjoy that much, and we put aside. So
good reminder.
So I'm just really feeling like I don't know why I'm talking to someone today who's listening to this, who's got,
I think you are.
You can, you don't have to. That's part of what I've realized. The oracle readings that I do, which are actually an activation mentorship of people's superpowers, is that things are going to come in and then you'll be like, I don't really find that interesting. Or like you'll put them aside and maybe later they'll be more interesting, or it's not for you. Or you'll tap into a version of them and you'll be like, but then you'll develop your own version that's different. That's like, there's so many things that are very traditionally known, like mediumship and stuff like that, where we end up doing our own different version. And like the traditional kind does not, I'm just speaking from experience, is not as like fun for us. So anyway.
Yeah.
But
that's
just
a really
like,
good reminder.
You just heard that one person, like, if you were listening to this, like all of that is also in you, like all of these aspects of the self and things to play with are there in your play box. Is not a word.
I like it. Let's adopt that as a word. I think it should be a play box.
Sounds like sexual euphemism.
Even better. Well, sex magic is another, big, like the sacred sexuality. I mean, sexuality and creativity are the same. It's the same chakra, like the sacral chakra is, so yeah, I don't know why I had to bring that up.
Tapping into that one with your other podcast, which have we said it? That's the name of the other podcast?
Oh yeah. That was, I started with our friend Shay, another podcast called Sultry Circus. And the first 2 episodes are me talking about BDSM. The other 2 are more about astrology and stuff. Like one of them was just like us talking about our new birth charts and why we chose the name and the music and the cover art. So at least it's not just about sex, but it's definitely more of a sexy vibe, which is interesting for me because I have not historically been very comfortable claiming any of my sexuality or sensuality or any of that stuff. And I know that that is because it's a block covering a superpower. So I am very gently unmasking, I am moving towards becoming in alignment with my sacred sexuality self that is wanting to come out. And I can feel it in my Venus Aries, which is one of the things that like started this whole thing about me feeling into my zodiac. I was like, oh my God, my Venus in Aries, I could see her as a person. And I was like, I'd never been able to connect with my Venus in Aries before. I was like, I don't understand. And all the memes I would see about it, I was like, that doesn't quite resonate, but like, okay, maybe. And then when I saw her on Saturday, I was like, oh shit, she is the one that has been kicking my own ass to get through all of this and find myself and value myself. And I was just like, you are my favorite. Anyway, she's very much that, a huge part of that sacred sexuality, like just being, that is part of my purpose, whatever the role I'm playing is in this next chapter. And so I was really glad to finally connect with her because she's pretty fucking awesome. And she is me. I have to keep reminding myself of that. Like, it's not some separate being that's like, oh, I wish I could be her. I fucking am her, but like, I feel like a flaily, awkward human, and which I am. And that's also part of my experience. But wow, way to go off on a side quest that has nothing to do with really anything. I feel very self-conscious right now. But anyway, moving on.
No, it was perfectly relevant.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I got lost a little bit, I think.
No, all good. I really feel like it's important for me to hold my freaking big branch.
It really is.
This entire episode for some reason. It smells so good.
Let's talk about that. Yeah. Tell us about do you know what the wood is, or like just
I don't know what the wood is. It was after, I have a very, very feel very connected to trees. And I know I've had many lifetimes as a tree. And it was after a big storm where all these branches were torn up and things were uprooted. And I'd done an oracle reading that talked about like a tree being uprooted and stuff. So, and then I just saw this one and it's like, I'd gotten some messages about like, you need to have a wand, a staff, like you're a wizard. Like I have a lot of wizard energy. Sometimes I have a bit more, it's easier for me to be in the masculine and feminine. So sometimes I have a bit more trouble connecting with my witch, but it's definitely some Gandalf stuff.
Yeah.
So I just took it, and I think that there's going to be more. I think I'm going to paint some parts of it too, but it's really about connecting with actual like magic in that way. A lot of the ways that I tap into my powers are less ritualistic and more just mind consciousness based, meditation, visualization, things like that. And I haven't gone as deeply into like magic ritual, but I think I'm being called to just bring more ritual and that type of stuff into my life. So I've been playing with it, and I seem to like to hold it, and then I like do movements and stuff, and I just kind of drop into my body a bit more, and like it helps me with balance. I like to balance it a lot as well. But I can feel that it's just like infusing it with power. I have a friend since childhood who was connected to a huge group of channelers and stuff like that. And she's always had this wand baguette that was one of like this network. And it came and lived with me for a year, I think, over the past few years. She was like, oh, it wants to go be with you. And I really felt the power of it. And I used it a lot. Like it helped me with a lot of deep healing stuff. And I would call on the network as well in it, of other wands. So I think that also opened me up to like the idea of like, yeah, how about freaking, it's more a staff for me than a wand.
Yeah. It feels
how I feel.
And is that an amethyst crystal?
It's purpurite.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Yeah. And I knew that it needed to be the purpurite because I already ages ago wrapped copper wire around the purpurite for some reason and was carrying it around with me everywhere. So I was like, oh, you've already kind of become wrapped in something that could wrap this to the thing. Harmonize your mental, emotional sides with your truest spiritual self. It's all about ascension. help harness stronger intuition and communication with higher beings.
Nice.
Okay, cool. Oh, feel
I
free
like
to
that.
speak out. Yeah, communicate. As I'm
Ah.
literally speaking out about.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
Wandy.
I like it. Oh, does it have a name? Is it Wandy? Is that his
Yeah,
name?
it was just like, does it have a name? It's not Wandy. I don't know. I'm gonna
Up to you.
let that marinate.
Yeah. It'll come through when it's supposed to. Did I tell you my hookah has a name? I think I told you that.
Oh, that's so cool. What's its name?
Oh, I didn't tell you that. What? Did I tell you that in a dream or something? I swear.
Maybe.
Okay. So my friend Ashley gave me this hookah, which it's huge. It is so tall. I don't even know. I don't know how to use it. I'm gonna have her come over and show me how to put it together and shit because I don't fucking know. But anyway, I was like, I don't know where this came through, but I was thinking about the hookah, and then like a visual came through of who he was. And he's just like this. He has dark hair and a little mustache, and his eyes are kind of like, I can't tell if they're like gray, maybe a little bit green. I think they might change colors. Anyway, and he said it like he wants to be known as Frankfurt or Frank or whatever, because like the one time, okay, I played D&D 3 times in my life, and the third time I somehow decided to be GM. I don't know what it was not any kind of D&D game you've ever really played. Like I was making up so much shit, I didn't care, but I was like, I knew I had to try it to be the GM. And so one of the characters I channeled was named Frankfurt, and Frankfurt was just a hilarious character that everybody loved. I don't even remember what Frankfurt was doing. I'm sure if I tried to channel Frankfurt again, he might not come out the same way, but he was just very goofy and gave a lot of good information to the group of characters like on their little quest. And so the hookah's name is he's not actually Frank, but like he loved that character so much that we're calling him Frank now.
Oh my God, I love that.
So this is, I think I needed to say that just as like a little example of like how things come to you. Like if you're listening to this and you're like, how do you find out the name? It doesn't have to come to you right away. Like Zadikad's staff does not have a name right now, but it will come to you at the exact right moment. And you're going to know that this is the name, and just let your imagination enjoy playing those games with your items of power that you have in your house. Not that a hookah is an item of power necessarily, but maybe it is. I don't fucking know. Like it seems like a cool energy. So we'll just
Oh yeah, for sure.
Another side quest for you. This is like like KK side quest central over here.
I love it. Frankfurt. That's really
Anyway,
cool.
back to your okay, so you've had past lifetimes as trees.
Yeah.
Do you know what kinds of trees, or just in general that you've been trees?
It's like very old trees. Like I was just watching a video about this remaining part of the world's oldest rainforest that's in New Zealand, and it used to cover most of the earth when there was like a supercontinent, but this was 150 million years ago, so it was pre-dinosaurs. And I was like, oh yeah, I was there. Like I'm like,
there you go.
I was definitely there. I was a tree, and probably more than just a tree, but I don't know why I tap into my tree self a lot. Very peaceful energy.
Yeah. I love your tree energy. It's so nice to be around. Oh my God. Especially like going out to play with you when we were in San Francisco and we were in the trees in the forest. And it felt like even more magical. And I already love trees, but like sorry about the train whistle, but anyway, it was just even more fun with you. And I don't know why, but probably because you have such good, awesome tree energy, and it just made the day even more fun. So.
Oh, that's so nice. I was going to talk about something I just realized. A lot of my powers have to do with timelines. And I was just realizing that every time, or not every time, but like many times when I meet up with another person who's like very in their magic, we will hop a big timeline or do what we did, like where we split. And I was like, oh, that happens to me like consistently. I was like, okay, that's another thing. Like if I get together with another person, like some timeline weirdness is going to happen. I think the more I say it, the more it will also just come online. It's like the more you just say things, the more you anchor them in. Mm-hmm. But you and I in Mexico, we split onto 2 different timelines. And then I had another experience of like in Montreal with another friend walking into a weird ice cream shop that was like a trippy portal. It was like all decorated like the 60s. It was also a museum, and we walked in and we walked out, and like the bay harbor beneath was completely restructured, and this big Ferris wheel was on a totally different side than it had been.
Okay.
And yeah, stuff like that. So
what do you see, like, not that you have to have an answer for this, but like, what do you see yourself doing with that? Or maybe nothing, maybe you just have fun with it and fuck it. Like, you're on different timelines.
Well, part of it in my own life is it's like I avert the catastrophic timelines. So I can make big improbable leaps to avert a catastrophic timeline. And I don't know if that's what connects to what was happening when I was with those other people, but that I've experienced individually in my own life and at the collective level too, like big timeline jumps where I'm just able to, in those moments, like when push comes to shove, like I can tolerate a really improbable leap, you know?
Do you suppose it has anything to do with like your working of miracles and stuff? I swear you have so much miracle energy.
A lot of my stuff is connected to miracles. I think that's this. I don't think there's one path to miracles, but I think the central sun that I feel very deeply connected to, and I'm a portal for, one of many portals is a very powerful miracle generator. And I'm supposed to like talk about miracles a lot and really help normalize them, like be one of those people who just like is like, yeah, they're just, you know, stuff we haven't experienced yet. It's just silly. They're miracles, but they're fun to call miracles too. It's fun. It's a fun word.
Yeah.
But like one of them being, I've told the story before about the climbing the mountain age 17 and like getting to the top, climbing up the side of the mountain that you weren't supposed to, where there was no path and it was very slippery. It was not having the right shoes, and then getting to this point right near the top and not being able to go further. And my friend leaning over to try to help me with the scarf and then falling, and she fell, hit jagged rocks, fell like 50 feet easily down the mountain and was like completely fine, like that kind of thing. But it's happened to me again and again, car accidents and like stuff, just like landing on the version where it's like, gonna walk away from this unscathed. And I really didn't believe in it. I thought that I was in like a final destination and death was just coming for me constantly.
Oh God, that's really hard. I mean, like, man, when you don't know this stuff,
I just responded to it with such terror.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of things in quick succession happened. So yeah, that timeline hopping stuff, and like at the collective level, again, where in my crazy unfolding of how I woke up, where it was like every little scary passing thought I had started to materialize, ending up with my mom in the hospital with blood clots in her lungs, with pneumonia. And then I had just discovered the podcast and kind of without fully knowing it, like did this very powerful healing on her through unconditional love. And like from like one day to the next, she was completely like better and like able to get back into her life and like recover and move on and heal from it. But also simultaneous to that was like this huge collective jump where from one day to the next, there was this massive rally for climate justice in Montreal. And that kind of thing where during the 2020 election, I took myself completely offline and took in no input at all about what was happening for that whole week. And I know it was such a crazy week where it was so drawn out too. And I lived in the timeline where Trump won because I thought I got a piece of information that snuck through that said that he won. Whoa. And so I lived in it for a few days and like accepted it, which
I don't think I've heard this before. Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So a big part of my dark night of the soul that like eventually led to my awakening was that 2016 election, because I tapped into my oracle seeing timelines ability, and I was just seeing all the darkest ones, and I couldn't tolerate it, and I had no spirituality or anything at that time, and it just felt like so overwhelming, and it was like it broke my brain.
Yeah.
And that's what like really put me over the edge into like a really big dark night of the soul depression and stuff. And so when it came around again, it was just a year and a bit after I'd had my awakening, and we were already facing another election. I was like, this is a big test, but I had come off of that crazy 2020 where I was so tapped into my powers that I was really at my peak of feeling confident in like the fluidity of reality. And I was just like, okay, no matter what outcome, I just have to know that humanity's going to get through it, and we're going to like figure out a way, and like whatever. And so when it came time, I was like, I'm just going to block it all out. And oh my God, yeah, I had a dream the night of where it was like going back and forth between the two and this like with these colors. It was really intense.
Wow.
And yeah, like was just like the next day, I think something happened where I was like, oh, I guess he won. And I just spent the next few days being like walking around and being like, okay, he's won. And I was just in this like really trippy internal state where I was just able to I feel like my future self was just directly in my body. And then it was like, oh, nope. And then I got to the thing where it was like, it hasn't been decided yet. And then I think I just knew that he was going to lose. And then he did. And then it was like, finally it went on to that one. So that was a really big collective.
That's huge.
Jump
That's so
where I sat in the timelines and straddled in a way that is very challenging, and I have not necessarily been able to do since then.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. Holy shit. I mean, I know I do timeline work stuff, but I think I do that shit in my dream state and I have no idea what I'm actually doing, but you're like consciously working with timelines. This is wild. I love it. I mean,
yeah, it's like when I say I did it, it's like you're just navigating, like you're jumping to the version where it was possible. So the whole collective made it possible, right? But you're just jumping into like somehow I see it as kind of like a viewfinder that goes through and then you like stop on the one that's like
interesting
and like being able to do that. Yeah, that was a trip. Like when I tell you in 2020, I was a very, very confident little magician. I was doing some shit. And then there was like a big integration and like also the balance of like having that much command and then the balance of like not wanting to live in a reality where you have total control over everything all the time because it's very boring and like creepy. I think I've lived that incarnation and it's just like it doesn't leave you feeling good when you're always controlling everything and not just like letting yourself be surprised and letting things happen to you and enjoying the feeling of surrender. Anyway,
enjoying the feeling of surrender. Oh man,
that just reminded me.
That's a tough one.
In one of my trippy meditations over the past few days where I've been going into that void space about like, you know, how much power we actually have as consciousness and stuff. I was feeling into how, I think this is maybe true for a lot of people who are control freaks like me. The reason we're so controlling is we are afraid. We know how much we like to surrender control completely. And we are afraid if we surrender control and we enjoy it, we're never going to want to make a decision again or do anything other than be flowing on the tide of what life gives us. There's like a funny like counter fear there. It's like
that resonates so hard. Oh my God. I didn't know I needed to hear that until you just said that. I'm like, oh fuck, that explains something.
And I don't think it's like the only reason that we resist surrendering, but it is a very interesting one to discover is just how much I remember way back when listening to the Jessa podcast and everybody was in their period, all of the people I was listening to that time were in their period of like going back to the time of Egypt and figure out which gods they were. And I did a past life regression and I was this man who like worshiped the gods and ended up like killing himself, like just going backwards and like dropping off of a high thing to die when something happened with one of the gods. And I was like, so at the time upset. So I was like, what? I was like, wanted to go back and see what powerful God I was, but I was like, and I've always had so much baggage around putting anybody on a pedestal of authority above me. Oh, and again, I think, and so when I saw that, I was like super triggered. I was like, basically like went back to a life where I was just like complete like worshiper of the gods. And I learned the lesson then, but I have to keep relearning it, which was that it was like very enjoyable. Like you just surrender and trust in the part of the God you that's bigger than you. And it's like so peaceful. Why would you ever want to do anything else than that? But I came into this life to like, again, integrate and find balance between two polarities. So that's why I have so many mechanisms in place to make me distrust that. It's almost like penduluming so hard into the other so that I don't just fall into that way again, so that I can try to find balance between the two. But then when you pendulum so hard and you like resist the surrender completely, then you're depriving yourself. Like you just have to trust that you can surrender and then also like come back to like choosing for yourself as well.
Yeah, that has been such a crazy journey about the surrendering and like the control stuff. I'm just, man, we picked a crazy ass fucking path. Oh, I want surrendering to feel like relaxing. And it
Well, that's
feels
what
like
it does feel like ultimately.
yeah.
And that's
And
why
maybe
we like
that's
love it so much, because it's so blissful.
okay, so now some more stuff is making sense about my own threshold guardians around that and the control that I still want to have, even if it's in the form of me inviting in a lot of anxiety, which is it gives me a false sense of control. Like at least if I have anxiety, I understand how to work with that, how to live with that, how that makes me feel like I have some sort of say over my reality, even if it's totally fucking unhealthy and I don't want anxiety, but it's like, you know, it's the only thing I can hold on to that makes me feel like I can, it's like when I have a certain kind of anxiety, I can be like, that's how you direct the outcome or whatever. Like if I'm anxious about this, that means I'll figure out how to survive or whatever the fuck, because this is coming down to survival fears for me. And it's like, one, I know that's not true, but like, anyway, but I feel like if I surrender, it's like, I'm not going to have a way to survive. Oh, wow. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not making much sense because a lot of this is just like coming through as a fresh download. I'm like, oh, well, that explains my threshold guardians of how I am literally built to surrender. Like the divine feminine is like, it just or not. And it's not just about the divine feminine, but like my makeup, my body type or my energy type is to receive and to surrender and like go with the flow. And yes, I have that divine masculine as well, but like I'm more divine feminine where I'm just kind of like everywhere all at once. And I just am like, I am the flow. And I cannot get used to that very gracefully or easy right now. And it's been, I'm getting a lot of clarity around this in this moment. So I'm going to maybe edit some of my flailing out, but like that was really powerful thing to hear you say.
Well, and that's again, I haven't talked about this. I've been talking about it with you off air, but like I've been doing things again. Like I've felt able to, where you follow the emotion and look what's behind the emotion, and you find another emotion, you go behind that. And sometimes I can't affect it too much for my nervous system, but a lot of times, like with the surrender, when I was just doing a trippy journey last night about surrendering to like a portal, and it was like you move back, there was fear and there was unease and there was like emptiness and void, and then you move through that, and behind that there was, or behind and within that there was just peace and love and stuff. It's like when you can, or sometimes the other day, a few days before, it was what's at the root of this fear around scarcity, shame and embarrassment around having to ask for help. What's behind the shame and embarrassment around having to ask for help? Anger at how the world is set up right now, like inner child anger about not being cared for by them, like following the emotions. Anyway, it's been fruitful for me lately to do that. But I think with the surrender, that's a good path, is to follow the emotions and say, like, I'm feeling this emotion, but what's the emotion? Or like this emotion is moving through me, but what's the emotion behind that emotion? Mm-hmm. And see what comes through.
A lot of mine feels like mistrust that I won't actually be cared for. So that's definitely a part that I haven't identified before. This is interesting. Okay. It's going to give me some stuff to think about throughout while it percolates the next few days or a week or however long it takes. Interesting.
So then there's the timeline stuff and the collective stuff. And then there was like a combination of like aligning yourself with optimal outcome and using active energy healing techniques, which were like going deep down to the soul to like talk to the soul and see what the soul wanted to do and like bring in support for parts and stuff. Where again, so I received energy healing that very quickly, I felt it in my body and it activated the ability. I was like, oh, I think I can do this too. And then started practicing, and it like escalated really quickly. And one of the things was with my partner who got COVID, and like in a scary way, like he just wasn't able to get off, like move for like 3 weeks basically. But it was like a practice round for me to like, I was able to like bring his fever down and things like that overnight. But then I started working with some people where there were call outs online for like, please send your prayers and hopes. This is a desperate situation. So it was strangers. It was people I didn't know. And I felt like I had energetic permission, like almost, what's the word when they have the document, the
Consent
relative
form?
sign, like, yeah, the relative had like signed the consent form for the person who was unconscious to say like, they're like, you know, send your spiritual help if you so I used those techniques, and I didn't know the first person I used them on, it was somebody I followed online. It was their sister who had gotten COVID and was in a medically induced coma. And they'd been in a coma for a while, and it was like getting to the point where it was really touch and go. And they're like, you might lose your sister. And I just saw this post that was like, and I was like, I think I'm supposed to help this person. And so I went in and I did an energy healing. I can't remember exactly. I wrote down all the notes because I was like, you have to write down the notes with the date because you're testing yourself right now. You're proving something to yourself. So I wrote down the notes. I connected with the soul. I felt a shift. And then within like 24 to 48 hours, there was a post, and it was like, oh, she just moved a bit and she just showed her first signs of like maybe being able to like breathe on her own again or something. And I thought I was done. And then something like a week or 10 days later, was like, she's still struggling. And I went back in and I was doing stuff, and then I was about to leave, and I heard her very strongly say, don't leave me here. And I was like, oh, there you are. And it was like, she was very scared. And I was like, hey, can we connect this person to her guides and her higher self right now? And I felt them connect. And this huge wave of heat passed through my body, just massive thing.
Whoa.
And then like within 24 hours, she was out of her coma. And then, and then afterwards, once she was out of coma, the person showed a picture and was like, oh, that's a child. Like it was like a very young person. And then I worked with other kids. With kids, I seem to have a lot of success because they don't have so many fixed ideas about what can and cannot be. And so I worked with like at least 3 more kids. There was like traumatic brain injuries and stuff, where one of them I had to go down into the center of the earth to this like rainbow pool place where they literally decided if they wanted to stay alive or not, because it was going to be a very arduous journey of recovery for like a little like 9-year-old boy. And they decided to. Anyway, in all of the cases, it was like very quickly would show signs of improvement in the areas that I worked on too. Like if I was drawn to a hand, it would be like, oh, now they're moving their hand, kind of like stuff like that.
So cool.
Yeah. So that was very intense. And what I immediately did with that was think that I had to fix everything, and like everyone in my life who had a thing, I had to go try to heal it for them. And then I was blocked all this healing people in my life. I was like, aside from that first time with Mike, where they were like, you're learning that it was like trial by fire. Like you're so scared for him. You're going to learn by like working on him. After that, it was like, no, you're not supposed to be making this the thing you do constantly all the time. And it took me a really long time to realize that kind of healing is actually not my first, like my total joy. And like, there are plenty of others who will be there to like, do it. And
like you were saying, they're all tools in the play box. And it's like, if you're drawn to it, then try it out and play around with it. It's like, find your frequency. It's okay to do a couple things. I also move around.
Was with the oracle part, like there were several people I went in and worked in, and I was like, no, this person's good. Like I can tell when someone's going to die too, which is also a big one to
that's a lot.
Integrate. I think there are people out there that are a lot better suited and have that as it's called the first responders, people who enjoy the first responder role more, where I enjoy that I'm helping you activate your superpowers role. And like first responder has its own level of intensity and stuff. And there are people that are really built for that.
I'm definitely not.
But it's just the people who are dying or animals, you feel their crown is lit up because it's like paving the way. For,
that's cool.
The soul to exit through the crown. You can also send support so that it exits through the crown, because that's the best way for the soul to exit. So that's one way. Or I would perceive sometimes like there was a possibility, like there was one person, it was somebody asked me to work on a family member, and I could just tell there was such a heavy, dark story there, and like they needed to get it off their chest, but
you can't.
It didn't go that route, but like, so that was really intense. And then also there was one time, a big time, with a close friend's mother who had cancer, where we were on the timeline where she was making a miraculous recovery and her tumors had started to shrink. We were both working, my magical friend was also working on her in a way, we were both working on her. And she was also taking those mushrooms that are like super good, the turkey tail. She'd started that. And I could feel the timeline where she survived. And then we hopped on that timeline. And like, I did like, that was like a huge, I felt when we hopped off the timeline. And then I went in and did another healing, and I could feel like her crown was activated. It was fuck. And I did like, it was a big lesson in
that's rough.
Like,
fuck. Yeah.
Because with miracles, it's like, again, if you go from being like, I feel like I have very little power to affect any kind of good in the world, to feeling like, oh my God, you know,
yeah,
we could all make miracles happen. Like, why wouldn't you want, like, I want to make them happen all the time. Everybody has to have a miracle if they want it. And if they don't, it's a tragedy. Like going through all of that, you know?
That's a lot. Fuck. I know.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Every time I don't know, I'm having a moment right now where I'm imagining us telling these stories even further into the future, just like being interviewed. Cause like, I don't know, they're going to interview the old folks, the people who went through the awakening and like are telling their stories, like being awake before, before other people, whatever, not hierarchy, but anyway. And I just am like just feeling the present moment of doing what we're doing and having gone through what we've gone through already. And then just imagining that future self, like talking about this time period. I'm just having a moment where I'm into two time periods at once. And it's really, really wild and really poignant. It's like these stories that we have that we're living right now. It's just, I don't even have words for it. This is the kind of shit that helps me stay in the present moment, even when I'm like flailing and feel like I can't. It's like, I'm not even articulating it very well. It's just, I'm feeling the magnitude of being alive right now and having gone through all the stuff that we've gone through, and how, yes, a lot of it has been very, very hard, but like, it's also fucking magical. Even the quote unquote bad parts. It's like, we learn to know that those bad parts aren't necessarily bad. They're just like information gathering and data, and like, it feels really bad to our human selves, and it's really hard to get through. And that's why we're there for each other. Like, that's why we have these healing abilities, and we can connect and like help each other through the dense emotions. And that's, I don't know. It's just crazy that we are doing this right now. Anyway, I just want us to do a big fucking hug, because these stories are amazing.
Well, I think that story in particular of the healing one was a very interesting path to go down, because it was an important thing for me to do while I was doing it. And then it was important for me to learn that ultimately it's not what I want to do with my life. It can feel very burdensome when you're like, oh, I can do something that will help someone so much. To give that up feels like a whole moral. Yeah. And again, like I said, it's like in that way, it's like very humbling. It's not the right word, but it's just like you the knowledge that I have that like the second I drop that allows someone else to pick that thread up, and like this, it flows through multiple channels. So you're not like the importance you start to place on your role. When you discover these things that you can do, it becomes a weight, but also it's like you put your value in it too. So you relieve that weight by knowing it's like, no, it's okay. It's going to come through someone else. And but you also have to like, then it's like a journey of like learning not to put your value in whatever power comes in and gift comes in, because it's just all for us to like play and experiment with.
Yeah. I like that open-handed, I don't know, Jessa, it was really helpful for me to hear her talk about these kinds of things in that way, where it was like an open-handed thing, where if you try to grasp something and claim it and hold on to it tight, it's like a pushing energy. It will slip away from you faster. But if you have your hand open, it's like more shit can come in, and yes, more shit flows out, but like it's a more, that's what the flow of energy is supposed to be. And you pick up what you want at the time and then let it go when it's time to let it go. And open-handed, playful curiosity. I forget how she phrased it, but it was.
Yes, exactly that. So that was an interesting one. And then I love being able to just see other people's superpowers and their like past lives and soul paths and things like that. So I really enjoy that.
You also get a lot of good messages for people. Like, you seem to just get information from other people's higher selves that they need to hear, which I have found extremely helpful. So thank you.
I'm a pretty open channel. Like if I'm talking to somebody, like the messages will just come through. Oh, I had medium come online in the classical sense of dead people like talking to me while I'm trying to fall asleep and all that shit. I did not like it. I clamped down on it while I was still in that period doing healing sessions. And even to an extent in my work now, I'll still open myself up to is the expanded self of if there's like a relative who wants to talk, but it has to be their expanded self. Cause those are the kinds of messages I'm giving anyway. I'm giving like very meta level soul messages. So it's not really helpful for me to hear from like the part of the self that's like tapped into a certain timeline or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was very overwhelming and I did not like it. To be falling asleep and hear people like very clearly yelling my name. It almost happened again last night. Ooh. I heard like a but and I was like, no. I was like, I do not like that form of I have my clairvoyance and clairaudience comes almost exclusively from just constant, like I'm just constantly reading my environment and it's constantly speaking to me. What people call synchronicity is just nonstop all the time, which was also very intense to acclimatize to. And like, it's just a lot of stimulus and data stimulus when like every single, like you're walking and a person's conversation directly answers the thought you just had, or everything you see is just speaking to your internal stuff that's going on. It's a lot. But I can also do that like when I'm around other people, it will amplify. Like I could do an oracle reading for somebody by just standing with them in anywhere and just seeing what goes by and like reading off.
It's so cool. It's so cool. This is why it's so much fun to travel with you, because you see so much shit it's a story. You're walking around constantly and just it's narrating. Your life is narrating.
The neurodivergent part where I'm like a very good pattern spotter. So nothing, I put the pieces like I will spot it and I will see how it relates to what you were just saying in your story. Like it's just very easy for me to see people's stories quickly and then like see the message that's coming through when we're in their environment and like be able to be like, here, look.
It is so fun. I love that. Speaking of, when are we going to go on our next trip? I'm just kidding, kind of, but not really, because I really want to go on another trip with you.
I know. Well, it's interesting because you have these I find your dreams really bring in concrete, like they very much anchor into a timeline very strongly. And your most recent dream had me and Pearl meeting up. I was like, are we going to meet up in real life again at some point? Is that like, yeah, that would be cool.
That would be
cool.
Cool.
And then the other one, I call it clair-smellience. It has its own thing, but that one bugs me. I get a lot of messages through smell and it's very, sound.
I don't know if I can handle that.
Anyway. Yeah, tell me about it. I finally realized that the smells that were plaguing me with my downstairs neighbors that I thought were just trickster energy trying to like push my buttons were actually messages, because it was consistent smells. And I was like, oh, garlic is telling me that I'm allowing something to drain my energy. It's like, you use garlic to work off the vampire. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then there was like fish for like internalized misogyny against the feminine energy kind of stuff. Anyway, it was like a breakthrough I finally had around the smells.
I don't think I could handle that one. I did have a clair-smellience one time when I smelled grass, like freshly mowed grass. And then like an hour later, my uncle came down the driveway to get the mower. And I was like, okay, that was a nice, pleasant clair-smellience, but I would not want to do any other thing. And I haven't had any since, but I'm already so sensitive to so many fucking things. I'm just like, I don't think I can add smells to any of that. Oh my God, no, thank you.
Yeah, no. It was more, I think I brought it down from what it originally was, where I was just walking around smelling smells out of that weren't connected to any reality. Like I'd start smelling trash. And I was like, no, I don't want that. And that went away, but it was still communicating to me a little bit through smell. So that's why when I talk to people about clairaudience and clairvoyance, I often talk about those things where it's like, just pay attention to what you're seeing around you. Because having literal voices inside your head or seeing image, that's very intense. And it's like, it's a much gentler, it's intense in its own way too, to have television actually talk to you. Like it does make you feel a way about a way, but it's a lot easier to process if you're just walking around and you want an answer to be like, oh, look at that. What is that billboard? Literally saying in huge letters to me right now, like then to have a big flashing sign appear in your own brain. Right.
Yeah.
So that's my advice to people a lot of times for.
Well, that's how I discovered I was an Akashic Records keeper in human form, or at least it opened the door to me to realizing it, is because somebody was giving a lecture about the Akashic Records and saying that that was a possibility. And the words like hit my brain in a way. I was like, why does this sound like her voice just got louder, even though it didn't? Anyway, so that can be, and I wasn't aware that that was a form of clairaudience until you were talking about it that way. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Cause I was like really sad that I didn't have the voices in my head or whatever. And it's like, no, it can show up in other ways. It doesn't have to be voices in your head. So I'm glad you're bringing that up.
And then the other one is just if I write something
Oh yeah,
into existence, which I've been doing since I was a kid and not knowing it, including a love spell that I wrote over and over again that was for my current partner, like describes him to a T, even his like height and stuff, which I wanted somebody almost my height.
So cute. So cute.
But like writing stories and that's been very magical, especially with children's stories, and like just then have them unfold in surprising ways and stuff. He's like really, really cool.
So I know you do those oracle readings, those personal oracle readings that are activations, but like, would you ever do writing a story, like channeling a story for someone? I think that's pretty cool, but I don't know if that's too much pressure or something. Cause I'm like, write me a story, bitch.
That's interesting. I think a story is a lot. I might write a poem.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, the oracle cards sometimes become a bit of like it. Like I just did
That's
one
true.
for a friend of mine, and it was a poem. It was like because I collage out words, but it turned into quite a long poem. So sometimes there is a bit of that aspect. I would say a poem or a song I have written for others, but a story
that would be
too much time for me.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that'd be a fun collaboration. Like you write the words, I write the music. We could do something together.
That would be very fun. I wanted to talk too about some other, like, because I feel like this is just like a list of powers for people to listen to, be like, do any of these resonate, or am I getting it? I want to talk about some of my friends' powers too.
Yeah. I
have friends who are even more fluid with timelines than I am, and are like, how that shows up in their life is they're constantly seeming to forget things. Like a close friend of mine, who her sister was like, remember you and so in high school and you were best friends? And she was like, who? I don't know that person at all. And she's like, you were literally best friends for years. Like, and she just was like, is my memory that bad? And it's like, no, you are like,
it's on a different timeline.
Or another friend who showed up at the airport with a passport that had expired, but she checked her passport, like that kind of thing. So it's like, yeah, like not fun to go through, because it's like, to be able to tolerate that they both just consider themselves kind of like, the way they talk about themselves is like, I have a terrible memory, or like, I can't necessarily stay on top of things, but it's the timeline stuff. And they both they both understand that too, but it's just like, for me, that's like, it's a lot. It's a lot to, and then one of them has done telekinesis. It was like, she was walking down the street listening to a specific I think it was Sinead O'Connor song, and the big giant garbage bins started flying into the air, one after the other.
What the hell?
So she has, but it was like, she wasn't trying to do it, and she was just like very impacted by the music and the emotion, and it happened to her a couple of times, and like the weather was really crazy too. Yeah, that's some like X-Men shit, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Goddamn.
Yeah. And that friend was also the one where their crystals, my crystals move around a lot, but like their crystals will like literally rearrange themselves into like a totally different design and stuff.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, this is wild.
Another friend who's just, it's kind of like a version of what both you and I do, but she's almost the most effortless way I've ever seen it done, of clearing dense emotions, like really, really densely rooted emotions and negative beliefs, just by having a conversation and like saying something kind and gentle, but like just like so.
That's cool.
So like in the way, like I think I've said this before, but sometimes it's fun to do it in a way that's more intentional and conscious, and like you direct the energies, or you like see the allies coming in. But it's like the total far end of the feminine spectrum of just like takes zero effort on her part. And it's just like, whoa.
That's beautiful.
Who else? I have a friend who's very good at making things work out in his favor, and like it's like warlock a bit energy. Uses a lot of masculine energy to create opportunities in his career and for money and for like getting a house and stuff. It's like very active, conscious masculine energy that's put into it to like make it happen.
That is interesting. It's so opposite of what I think I do that maybe a tiny bit, but I mostly just receive shit, go with the flow, and like then make something. It's a response, I guess, like the manifesting generator response is what I put it to. I mean,
yeah, there's just so many, and they're so fun and cool, and they're like,
I know,
like I said, like, something will come in for somebody, but it's like, it's just the idea of it, and then you play with it and you make it personal to you, how you want it to be. Or if you don't want to play with it at all, but if you're like, this sounds kind of like boring, it's like, you don't have to do it that way. There's like I promise you, there's an easier, less boring, more fun way.
That's what I think. That's one of the most important things that I've been learning along this way is like, just because I have a similar ability to somebody does not mean it's going to come out and be one, experience the same way, or two, just like come at it all the same way. I mean, we're all going to have our own unique frequency. And because I used to get a little like, because I started reading the Akashic records, and I was like, God damn, fucking everybody reads the Akashic records, whatever. And it's like, no, you do it your way. Like, it's, I don't know. Definitely don't think you're not a special snowflake, because you are, Leo. This is like the Aquarius Leo axis. We're like, yeah, we can fucking all do it. And then it's like, but you can do it your way. And that's
exactly, that's the fun of it.
It is
like your remote viewing. Like there's a way that's, I mean, if you end up going that path, it's like, it's special to you.
Yeah. Because when you first talked about remote viewing, I was like, I had a mixed reaction to it because I thought it was cool, but I also like only have the old idea of it, like the CIA programs or whatever, like where people just like, anybody can do it. You can be trained to like view things as a video game or, whatever it is. And I'm like, it doesn't sound, then you're like, remember, you can do it your way. I'm like, oh yeah. I just haven't discovered that yet, but maybe I can go into someone else's eyes, which is what happened in my dream. I was in a dream and I was like, I unhooked from I was literally looking out from their eyes and didn't realize it until I saw myself unhook from their eyes. And I was like, oh shit, what the fuck? Yeah. I have not done that in real life yet, but we'll see. Literally.
And then in other dreams, you were the camera and you would zoom in, and it was that zoom also felt like part of it, the ability to zoom. Jumping into other people's eyes. It's very, I mean, I have a friend who can actually like astral travel too.
That was a cool one.
I've astral traveled twice in my dreams, and I found it to be a lot. And I feel like I've clamped down pretty hard on like, that's bad. But like literally like, coming out of his own body and like feeling for him, like a bit of paralysis in the body first. And this like vibrating feeling that like goes through him and his third eye and stuff. And then like zooping out into the nether spheres of since he was a kid.
So cool.
And another one that I actually really like and I still use, which there's people that have a term for this. I can't remember what it is now, but it's when you go into an animal's body. When you said looking through another person, it reminded me of that. So it's happened to me in dreams and then also in conscious meditations, where first one in a dream was so fun because it was a body of like a crow or a raven and I was flying in it.
Oh, cool.
Really cool. It was really vivid and lucid. And then in the meditations, I had a terrible arachnophobia. It was the beginning of me working meditation a lot with spiders to like overcome that fear of that part of myself. But it like crawled into my mouth and then I became the tarantula. But what was cool about it was they'll always show me something. They're showing me something about how the animal operates that's like helpful for me to know, like this can help you or whatever. And then I'll go and like look up the animal, and then what they were showing me turns out to be true. So you're like, oh, that was like
so cool.
So when you talked about your Akashic record stuff and you were saying if somebody asked you about something that you didn't know about, you didn't know. I think like I think you could.
Maybe.
Literally, because things have come through. I think they already are for you too. It's just a question of getting comfortable with that, because that's another level of trippiness to be.
That's true.
comfortable
That's
around.
true.
But I know it's happened several times already where in your dreams or whatever, it's like, yeah, and that's what was actually happening in real life. Like you literally psychically tune into something you couldn't have known about
Dang, you're right. Okay.
And you can have that with information too. For me, it's just a lot of times it will be some fact about an animal, and then I'll go look it up and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's actually, there is a thing with like the hairs on a tarantula's legs. Like,
that's really cool.
when I tell you I did not know anything about tarantulas, I did not want to know anything about tarantulas. But that's very, and like, that's like very, if people want to experiment with that, like you can just put on a supportive, go on YouTube and look up like journeying tracks or things like that help you get into that brainwave state, and just like ask for an animal to present themselves to you, and then see what happens, and like just experiment with it.
Just play. That's the key word, is play. We are here to play. And man, coming from someone who has spent most of their life being super uptight, it's a reminder I have needed quite a lot. So in case anyone else does too, just play. It's okay. You're allowed to play.
Yeah. It is a lot. There's a lot of fun stuff to play with. Woo! Yeah. And I know I'm supposed to work with, it's like a very limited number of people. I think it's like one person every few months for these oracle card readings, because they are more of a mentorship thing about activating abilities. But
that makes sense.
You're hearing this and you think that's you.
Contact information in the show notes.
Yeah. Wow. Woo. All right. We did it.
Yeah, that was a fun one. Talking about this was perfect. Jupiter cazimi in Aries. I mean, like you picked the day, which is maybe why you had that autocorrect of Jupiter Maximo cazimi.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Pay attention to your autocorrects. That's also messages come through. Yeah, Jupiter Maximo cazimi. Okay, let's use this Jupiter cazimi. I knew we were supposed to talk about our powers at some point, but it would make sense that we have to go through talking about our precious parts that we're feeling the opposite of powerful first, and like send them a lot of love.
Good call. It's just amazing how things work out when you just let the ideas flow and move the energy around, and just like, oh yeah, we're supposed to talk about this today. I don't know why, but we're going to do it. And then it always makes sense if you don't try to control it.
All right. I'm feeling very floaty. I think I'm going to have to go sit on the ground for quite a long time and just woo.
Yeah, I'm going to go sit in the sun, do a little meditation, grounding. Nice. This was a fun conversation though. I loved it. Any parting words?
Share your superpowers with us. Tell us what your superpowers are. Let us know. Have fun out there, space kitties.
Love you guys.
Alakazam. Bye.